Hello everybody, it's ShadowSlayerX, and we're continuing our Dungeons & Dragons project 5th edition. So this one we're going to be covering all the races that are playable to people as of June 24th, 2016. So right now, all the races that are in the Player's Handbook, 5th edition, the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, which is 5th edition, and the online Unearthed Arcana articles that they've posted. I've grabbed a few pictures, I think, for each of those races, but a couple ground rules before we go through those. When it's going to be coming to half races, I'm not sure where we're going to go with that yet. So, for instance, there's a common what if Elves and Dwarves could have offspring. They'd be the Dwelves, or half orc and an elf. Or orc elf, doesn't matter. You know what I'm trying to say. I don't know where we want to go with that. So for now, like we'll push that aside to later, and maybe even talk about that in the next one once this episode covers all the player character races. Second point I want to make is this video is not going to include every single possible sentient race in our world. Like I said, we're just covering playable races. And I don't have any of the stats or anything here because that might entail a completely different thing. I just want this to be a brief overview for people who for people who have and have not played the game, or people who are just interested in world building and storytelling and stuff like that. We can go into way more in depth in later D&D race, like part 2, part 3, part 4, or whatever. But for now, we're just going to cover what's here, and then we'll have a little bit more of a discussion at the end. Okay? Cool. All right, let's start with humans. So humans, like I have here, they're all builds, all sizes, and in our world, I think it'll be smart just for humans to have the natural human color skin that our world does. So no purple skin unless you have a condition or you're cursed or whatever. And like no, stuff like that. So for people who haven't played, or I was gonna say, or I can't picture what a human looks like, haha. But yeah, so I just put a couple pictures in here so you could see. So I think we have like a rogue here on the left dropping some poison into a goblet, and on the right we have a female warrior. Looks like she's the last one in the battle. Humans mechanically are they get the most stats, but it's literally +1 to everything. There's a variant of human where they get even less stats than any other race, but they get a feat at level 1, which I think is really neat for people who go human. But if you didn't roll well on your stats, then sometimes you might want the +1 everywhere. So yeah. All right, let's move on to Dragonborn. Now, I could have found a million pictures of Dragonborn, but I thought this one was really neat. So, for people who don't know, as a Dragonborn, you have to choose a draconic ancestry, so like where your draconic bloodline came from. So, for instance, this picture I grabbed here is of a female gold dragon bloodline Dragonborn. And as you can see, Dragonborn in 5th edition, and I think all Dragonborns in other editions as well, they don't have wings. So that's what makes them playable characters here, because they don't have like legendary attacks that you get 3 points to cast a legendary move every single turn or something. They've pretty much made them very equal to the other races, except they have a really cool ability to have dragon breath, and they get that right away. It's part of your initial, like, just because you're Dragonborn, you have a breath attack. I can't remember what gold is. I think gold is fire, but for instance, black is like acid. I think blue is electricity, and silver is cold, I believe. So there's a bunch of cool stuff like that. And the reason I grabbed a picture like this, because I didn't want to confuse people who've played a lot of Skyrim and think that Dragonborn is more of a class than a race. Obviously, people who've played D&D before you know this, but for those who don't, yeah, Dragonborn, you are a legit dragon. Like, you speak Draconic, speak Common. Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, moving down to Tiefling. So, yeah, you can see, I just grabbed art off Google, so I don't claim to own any of these pictures. Please don't flag me. Tiefling, they are, if I read correctly, it's like they are like a demon-human hybrid whose existence is because of one of the gods, I think Asmodeus. Not 100% sure on that, but basically they're like an infernal looking kind of race, like a devil, like the devil race, basically. So actually that's exactly what they are. They're like a human-y devil race. So your skin, this is where the skin colors can be like, you can be red, orange, like pink, purple, like, you know, whatever you want to be. Tieflings do have horns, they do have tails. I think they have, just for being tieflings, they have resistance to fire, and they also are able to cast spells as they, like, race spells as they level up, and it's pretty neat. I've always liked tieflings. Oh, shoot. I gotta go back up for a sec. Or do I not? No, I don't. No, this is the first one. Okay. So, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, tieflings. I've always liked them. Like, being able to play, like, a devil kind of race, I think is really cool. In the Sword Coast Adventures thing, I think there was a winged variant of tieflings. So, in the Sword Coast Adventures guide, it changes some stats to allow the tiefling to actually have devil devil wings or demon wings, which obviously will change a lot of things, because having the ability to fly as a player can be really good depending on your stats and your character and your race and all that stuff, or really bad. If you get shot out of the air, you have to take falling damage per 10 feet. I think it's per 10 feet you fall to the ground. So I think once you get hit, you have to make a check to see if it affects your flying. So, yeah, that's always something to worry about. All right, let's move on to elves. I don't think I'll have to touch too long on elves here, because in the fantasy setting, elves are everywhere. Elves, you're usually tied to nature. They have pointy ears. They usually have a slender, slim build. They're almost famously known for having great dexterity and pretty impressive strength. So that just meaning that they use bows very well, and they are impressive with swords. I think they're much like the mechanics of Dungeons and Dragons. They're good with swords that are quick. Like, you don't see elves usually wielding great, like, two-handed great swords. Not saying that they can't. I'm just saying in fantasy they're usually archers, or some elite stealthy unit that uses like rapier swords, like quick swords, piercing instead of slashing, stuff like that. So I think I've highlighted here some of the sub classes that I found throughout the books. So high elves can be split between sun elves and moon elves, or just high elf on their own. So technically it's like 3 in 1 there. Wood elves, dark elves, which are the drow. They're usually like more like this fella here on the left. So darker skin, usually whiter hair. They all pray to different kind of gods and stuff. Eladrin. Now, Eladrin you won't find in the player's handbook. You won't find it in the Sword Coast Adventures guide. The Eladrin is actually in the Dungeon Master's guide. It's something that the creators put together. I think Eladrin was a race in previous editions, but not in this one, which, I mean, why not, right? But yeah, so they actually have it built. It's very simple in the Dungeon Master's guide. They get like the ability to they call it face step, which I think is what it's called in 4th edition. But basically they have the ability once a day to teleport at will, and I think that's pretty cool. The Avariel, they were winged elves. They are mentioned in the Sword Coast. So are the Lythari, which are basically elves that can change into animals, but not like werewolves. They can't stop like halfway or have a hybrid form. They just can transform into animals. Then there are sea elves, which are an aquatic elf race. And then, if I read correctly, star elves were like these like really powerful elves that lived like in one of the other dimensions, the Feywild. And then they got driven out or something. Yeah, I didn't really focus too much on it. And then wild elves are just a band of elves that kind of like abandoned their traditions and they're doing their own thing. So that's always interesting. All right, half elf. I didn't find too many pictures about half elves because they pretty much look like elves or they look like humans. So I found a picture of a half elf bard here. So the big thing about half elves is you're more accepted in human society if you're a half elf, right? Because, well, more than elves would be. Not saying that all humans are racist towards elves, but some folk will be, just like in our world. Some folks will be opposed to the elf traits within a person. So half elves have really good statistics in the player's handbook. It's probably why they're a highly used race. They get a lot of bonuses. They get a lot of bonuses from the elf side, and they gain a few extra thrown in there, I guess, due to the human side being part of them. They're very ideal mechanically. All right, half orcs. Half orcs are pretty cool because I'll go the opposite of half elves. Mechanically, half orcs have this ability that when they get knocked to 0 HP and it doesn't kill them outright, so like it doesn't do an insane amount of damage, they go back to 1 HP, which would require someone giving them a healing potion, casting a spell on them, stuff like that, which is huge. And then they have another mechanical ability that I think when they crit, they get to throw in an extra die. So like if you're rolling a d6, a regular Monopoly die there, you get to throw in another one. And that just means more damage, right? And it just makes you more insane. So half orcs are almost always this like very powerful, strong race. But yeah, so in our world, I don't know what we're going to do with orcs. I've always been a fan of the green-skinned orcs. Yes, I grew up with Warcraft, but I've since grown to see like different kinds of orcs where you have the gray skin or like more of a humanish tinge skin. So I think in our world, if we were to do something like that, it would be a tribe thing, right? I think that would make sense. I mean, tribes could be would a green orc tribe let a gray-skinned orc into their tribe? Like, what are the rules with that? Like, what does the culture say? You know what I mean? Because yes, in our world, we're all about being very accepting and making rules and stuff, like exceptions or changing the rules to make it fair and stuff like that. But in a Dungeons and Dragons world, it's more medieval, it's more fantasy. We could go, if we do so choose, we could go where there are people who are more progressive, but just that might not be every single little tribe you run into. So if the party has a half orc with them and the party thinks, oh, you guys are of the same race, like they might go accept you, go talk for us. That might not always work. They might get angry seeing this person. So, food for thought. Dwarves. Yes. Now, dwarves, what can I say? They are small, they're stocky, they're extremely strong, they're good with a hammer for battle or for forging weapons, forging armor, stuff like that. We have hill dwarves, which I found out are the gold dwarves, mountain dwarves, which are also named shield dwarves, and the gray dwarves, which are the Duergar. I don't think I have a picture of the Durgar, but the Durgars are, picture this fella, but with a much almost undead look, where it's like the skin is kind of gray and the hair is kind of white, and that is kind of what Durgar look like. Same thing for us. I like how the pictures have different things. Like we have a mountain behind this guy, we have hills here, and just I guess forest. So just trying to cover all the backgrounds if we can. Yeah, I don't have too much to say about dwarves except for we'd have to create different societies and cultures and stuff like that, which I think's fun. But yeah, so let's move on. The Goliath. Goliaths basically are the player's version to be giants. Now, mechanically, you are still this, like, mechanically, you're a medium creature. Medium is very broad in D&D. But basically, the Goliath is a big-ass man or woman, and they have incredible strength. One of their abilities is that they can carry, I think, like, one size bigger than they are, so they can carry the same amount as a large creature could. Obviously, giant, like they're giants, right? Yeah, and these guys are usually mountain folk, or they're secluded. But we, like I said, we don't have to follow any of these things if we don't want to. I'm just putting out just giving you guys some ideas, hopefully brewing some ideas in your guys' head or girls. And yeah, Goliath, they're awesome. All right, halflings. So halflings, we've got the Lightfoot halfling, Stout, Strongheart, which is basically stout, and the Ghostwise, which I think Ghostwise can cast spell. No, they can speak telepathically to people near them. Yeah, pretty neat. So halflings. Now, I always get halflings and gnomes messed up in my head, probably due to too much World of Warcraft, or what was the other game I played where halflings were so stereotypical? Blood Bowl. Oh man, because I always thought halflings were shorter than dwarves. So like, take a dwarf who's already short and stocky, and you just squish them vertically down. But I think in D&D, halflings are more like hobbits, where they're just smaller people. They're proportionate, like they just look like tiny humans, right? I love this picture right here of she looks like a rogue swashbuckler, and then we got a mage here and a ranger here, or wizard, I should say. But yeah, so halflings have a really cool ability called Lucky. So when they roll a 1 on, I think, anything, or is it just ability checks or D20 checks? Basically, you roll a 1. They have a trait called Lucky, which makes them re-roll any 1 once. But if you roll 1 twice, too bad, you stuck with a 1. Halflings, I think they're kind of like all over in society. I think they mesh very well with humans because basically they look like humans. Although they probably get picked on for their size and stuff like that, and probably not picked for armies unless they've proven themselves. So in our world, we can create like a halfling mercenary company. Like, we can do whatever we want. I'm really hoping people are like brainstorming ideas, and hopefully the comments will fill out a bit. I actually will put in a email address if people want to email ideas and stuff with me. I can't guarantee getting back to you as quick as I'd like due to life and work and stuff like that, but I'll do my best. I'm going to try to put one of these out every week. So anyway, let's move on. I got sidetracked. Gnomes. Now, gnomes are the ones that I think look different. They are tiny, but they look different. So on the left here, I found a druid, and on the right, I think it was a rogue or a fighter. I can't remember. As you can see, at least in the picture on the right here, the features are a little chibi. And if people know what chibi is, it's like Funko Pop kind of style, except for not like different. You know what I mean? But I think they're, I want to say they're smaller than halflings, but I'm not sure, because I know that halflings, dwarves, and gnomes have a smaller running speed because they are smaller. Um, I didn't really read up too much about gnomes. I've never had anyone want to be a gnome. But there are forest gnomes, rock gnomes, and deep gnomes. So we can do whatever we want with that. Yeah, I mean, like, when we're coming up with the cities and towns and societies, like, hopefully we can come up with some sort of template, like, what races live here, like what main races live here, and we'll discuss like what that means, like 10% of the population, or 10% of the population of a town is like this race, or has to at least be this race or something. And do they live in different districts in the city, or is it all just spread out and doesn't matter? Stuff like that. All right, Genesee. Genesee are elemental people. They're fire, earth, air, and water Genesee. They all have different abilities, like, and I mean, you can probably guess, like, I think the fire Genesee has resistance to fire and can cast fire. I think the air Genesee, or no, the water Genesee can breathe indefinitely in water. I think the air Genesee can hold their breath indefinitely, stuff like that. I think they come from a different plane of existence, but like they do exist on, like, in our fictional world, because, and especially since people can play as them, right? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, this is what this whole collaboration is going to be like. Do we have tribes of Genesee? Do we have tribes of just certain types of Genesee? Or are all Genesee just wanderers, nomads potentially? Or like, you know, like, have they created the greatest building or city ever built? Like, you know, like, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. I'm obviously gonna come up with some ideas for all these races and stuff, but I really hope people jump in on it. All right, Warforged. So Warforged is, you probably guess. Warforged is, they are created. I am pretty certain that they are created entities of metal. I mean, the most basic one is, think of like an animated suit of armor, right? Except for it's been given sentience, like it is its own being, it's its own person. So I grabbed two pictures here. I grabbed a more medieval looking version of a Warforged, and I grabbed the most modern probably picture of a Warforged you could. So how does one go from this to this? I would say it's all quality of the person creating the Warforged. The type of metal the Warforged is created out of, things like that. Obviously, vibranium is a Marvel thing, but we can create our own metal, right? Like, we can have some precious ore that exists in the world that, if, like, in Game of Thrones, they have Valyrian steel, like, you know what I mean? Like, we can do that too. Doesn't necessarily have to mean all Warforged are made out of it. It's just something to throw into the world building element that goes on here. All right, moving on. Changeling. So changelings are exactly as they sound. It was actually not the easiest to find just a straight up picture of what a changeling looks like, because changelings, as their name would let you guess, is they can become anyone I think they've ever come in contact with or seen. We can even throw in an extra caveat in our world for changelings that they have to physically touch and acquire like the DNA of a person to assume their form or something like that. I'd totally be game for that. But yeah, I think that's like their big trait, is that they can polymorph into anyone. And the two pictures I grabbed here is a male and a female in their true form when they're not polymorphed. Yeah, pretty cool. Next was the shifter, and yes, it does stand for shapeshifter. And there were many different categories that shapeshifters could be, like Beasthide, Cliffwalk, Longstride, Longtooth, Razorclaw, Wild Hunt. They all have very specific abilities that you'd probably change the type of shifter you are based on your class. The tiger there on the left is straight out of the player's handbook. I was trying not to use those pictures, but it's so cool. Actually, the shifter itself isn't in the player's handbook, but the picture comes from the player's handbook. And then on the right, we got a female, I guess we could say Longtooth or Longstride, whichever one we want. Razorclaw. See, you can just flavor them as you will. So yeah, they're basically werewolves. They never go into a full animal form. They only go to their hybrid form. And yeah, I don't think there's too much else. I'm a huge fan of anthropomorphic animals. I still am debating, because the shifter race, I think, is humans that can go into this. But what if there were tiger folk races, right? We'll talk about that later, but yeah. All right, Minotaur. Minotaurs are probably like the number one race that, like, anyone who's seen a Minotaur and think they're really cool would ask the Dungeon Master, like, can I play as a Minotaur? And the answer is always. The Minotaur on the left looks like a monk Minotaur to me, because he's using his fists and he has light weapons on his hilt there. And then Minotaur on the right looks like it could be a barbarian. Most likely a barbarian due to what it's wearing and the weapon it's using, stuff like that. So Minotaurs, they have some really cool abilities. Basically, if they're charging an enemy, they can use their horns as an extra weapon, and I think that's awesome. That's so cool, and it would really work well on monks, especially with the monks that can increase their speed and use their key points, to do different things. So, but yeah, I love Minotaurs. In pretty much every story I've done, I've somehow wormed a Minotaur in there somehow, and I love them. I always loved Minotaurs. All right, let's go. I think this is the last race, and the Erico. So the picture on the right there is more likely what Erico will look like. The picture on the left was a cool picture I found about Erico, where instead of having an eagle, because the pictures are mostly eagles, it had a owl face, and I thought that was really cool. So Erico, I think, are the only race that have natural flying. They also have a natural weapon in their talons. Yeah, and I think they're just so cool. Once again, they have that flying issue where you got to balance things or have more fights indoors or under a tree canopy, stuff like that. I've just always liked the look of them. Really cool. I mean, like in World of Warcraft, they kind of adapted the Aarakocra to Ericoa. I think that's it. So yeah. Now that's it for the races. I kind of pulled this out of the Dungeon Master's Guide, and it is make your own. So they talk about like making your own player races. I kind of took off a few things just so that if people want to make races, and not necessarily races that people can play, I encourage that. You can put them in here or on the email address I'll provide and send them to me. So for instance, what does the race look like? Like, I already had one person contact me, and they were talking about like kind of like a insectoid sort of race where, for instance, like they could like swarm their opponents with like smaller, like they could produce like little units to like go deal damage and stuff. I thought that was kind of cool. And for instance, we could talk about like the race's culture. Where do they live? Are there interesting conflicts built into the race's history and culture that makes the race compelling from a storytelling standpoint? So, for instance, it doesn't even have to be the race's... yeah, it would be the race's history. So, for instance, like, if there was a great war and the tides were changed due to, like, this race, like, intervening or, you know, stuff like that. Or some bonus that they have that the one side had to earn or gain favor from them, stuff like that. What classes and backgrounds are well suited to members of the race? That would be more for like it does come from a storytelling standpoint, but it also comes from a mechanical standpoint. I mean, like, if we were to turn a race into a playable character race, then we might want to say, well, yeah, they're actually better at being a sorcerer or a monk or anything like that. I did list all the standard classes in the player's handbook there. I didn't put down the sub classes within each one. If people do want that, I'll definitely put that in the next episode. So we have Barbarian, Bard, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard, and then I put custom for... There are lots of custom races and classes out there. We haven't looked into them as a group yet. But, yeah, so continuing on. What are the race's signature traits? So, like, do they all have, like, some weird bone formation coming out of their head? Or, you know, do they have do they have two tails or something? Stuff like that. In the case of a new subrace, what sets it apart from the other subraces of the parent race? So for that one, let's put this in here. So if you wanted to add subraces like Shifter, you want to put some like aquatic version in there or whatever, go for it. I mean, like, we can do whatever we want in this world. Like, this is going to be a blank slate world. And these are all just the races that you can currently play as. There are plenty of races, which I want to touch in a different episode, that are like we have goblins, we have gnolls, we have goblins, gnolls, demons. Like, there's so many different ways we can go, and I want people to just open their minds, especially if you want to create your own custom ones. Like, well, what if we have, like I mentioned before, tiger folk or lion folk, and you could go all anthropomorphic animals, or you've come up with, like, I remember I came up with a race a while back, and they were like an ethereal race that existed on our plane, but they could only inhabit dead bodies, and they basically breathed life into them and took it over, but they were more inherently evil, but I never actually went through with it. Yeah, and I remember also starting to create the Saiyan race mechanically, and I never actually finished that either, because I thought that would be really cool. How would you work the Saiyan's traits from Dragon Ball Z mechanically into Dungeons and Dragons and make it fair? And then I figured, well, they probably need their own class, that you can only choose that class if you're Saiyan. So it got into a whole big spiel, but excuse me. Anyway, let's deal with that. So hopefully this has shed some light and brewed some ideas. And yeah, so I think the next time I'll do a race video. Hopefully I'll have enough responses by then, or a bunch of ideas, or stuff I've just concocted on my own, and I'll let you know. I think I'll put a list of all sentient races in, because I think that'd be interesting. Like, all sentient races that are in the monster manual and stuff like that will exist in our world, that people can interact with and actually speak to, I think I'll put in. And then, yeah. And then from there, I think it's starting to make our own stuff and actually, like, making histories and cultures and like really fleshing out certain stuff. Also, randomly, I'll see if I can come up with a map, or at least a map of a region, which might help with certain things. But if people come up with their own ideas and stuff, please post them and or send them to the email at the bottom. I should probably go back to that. Which is zapdos3002@hotmail.com, because the others were taken, all 3001. Yeah, so just send me stuff, and or post them here. If people post them here, I think that it'll breed more ideas, good or bad. But if people want to keep something to themselves, or they're shy about if it's a good idea or not, like I said, feel free to email me. And yeah. Okay. I think I've blabbed on for long enough. Hopefully it made sense. If it doesn't, I will answer your questions in the comments, or in private messages, or at the email address. Cool. Alright, I've been ShadowSlayerX. This has been our Dungeons and Dragons project, the Races category, part 1. And we'll see you next time. Peace.